Imagine watching your life's work completely crumble. Or to take it to an even heavier extreme, imagine losing someone you love deeply.
Yeah, that's an incredibly tough thing to picture.
Right. But now imagine feeling absolutely no grief, like no sadness at all, just total unbothered acceptance. For most of us, that sounds, well, impossible, maybe even sociopathic.
Oh, absolutely. It goes against everything we know.
But today, we're exploring a worldview that demands exactly that level of profound, unshakable detachment from the things we care about most.
We're looking at a translated 2023 essay. It's titled My View of the Way of Nature, and it was written by an author named Suofeng.
Right.
And it outlines the core tenets of a community known as Lifechanyuan. It is this ultra-minimalist, radically deterministic philosophy of living that really attempts to completely redefine our relationship with the universe, our emotional responses, and even, the very concept of human ambition.
Before we go any further, I just want to make our parameters today crystal clear for you listening. We are acting purely as impartial guides here.
It's completely impartial.
Our mission is not to endorse the viewpoints, the spiritual claims, or the lifestyle of the Lifechanyuan community. We aren't taking any sides. We are simply unpacking the fascinating and honestly sometimes highly controversial ideas within this source text.
Exactly.
We really want to extract the core tenets of this way of nature, to understand how it functions psychologically, and to examine the author's promise that this philosophy acts as an internal GPS for a simpler, joyful life.
And to start, the architecture of this whole belief system begins with a foundational premise about reality itself. The entire text hinges on a single, uncompromising equation.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is this equation?
It's that the greatest creator equals Tao, and Tao equals nature. The author uses these terms interchangeably, establishing that they are completely, totally synonymous.
Because when we hear the word nature, our modern brains immediately picture like a national park or recycling or maybe an endangered species.
Right, but the text is operating on a much grander scale than just trees and wildlife. The author defines nature as the total embodiment of all laws and principles governing the universe. It's like the active consciousness of creation.
Wow.
And the essay really goes out of its way to establish the sheer terrifying scale of this concept. It encompasses the absolute like the fluttering of a butterfly's wings, or a blade of grass growing, or just a single person sneezing.
These.
Yeah, but it simultaneously governs the macro of violent volcanic eruption, the shifting of tectonic plates, or the literal explosion of a distant star. Every single phenomena, without exception, is framed as part of nature's deliberate evolutionary process.
That actually reminds me of how we think about the laws of physics. Take gravity, for example.
Right.
You don't have to consciously wake up, stretch, and decide to follow gravity today in order to be bound by it. It doesn't require your belief to function.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And the text explicitly makes the same point about the Tao. Shuefeng writes that whether a person consciously intends to follow the way of nature or completely ignores it, the reality remains unchanged.
So you can't opt out.
No life, no event, no historical movement can escape what the text calls the palm of the way of nature.
Being held within a palm, that's a really crucial psychological mechanism in this philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. If you truly internalize that everything from your morning sneeze to a supernova is already perfectly calculated and held within an infallible system, well, the burden of modern existence completely shifts.
Because we spend our days feeling like life is this incredibly complex puzzle that we have to actively solve. We're always stressed about optimizing our routines, securing our futures, controlling our relationships.
And the author argues that this illusion of control is precisely what makes human life feel heavy and troubled and painful. By accepting that you are already perfectly embedded within nature's laws, you stop fighting the current. The text claims this realization alone transforms the human experience into something simple, light, and joyful.
I hear that, and I mean, the idea of dropping the existential weight of the world sounds incredibly appealing. But applying a grand cosmic equation to a random Tuesday afternoon requires a massive structural shift, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. For a community like Lifechanyuan to practice this day to day, they have to strip away almost everything that constitutes normal human society.
So how do they actually do that?
Well, the philosophy demands a radical decluttering of human constructs. The text notes there is absolutely no idol worship permitted, zero. There are no temples, no monasteries, no shrines, and no churches.
Not at all.
None. The physical architecture of human reverence is completely abandoned.
So they are actively avoiding the mediation of religion. There's no
Mhm.
building you go into to find the divine. You just integrate directly into the natural world.
Yeah, and it goes much deeper than just physical buildings. The community completely rejects the celebration of festivals related to gods, Buddhas, celestial beings, or saints.
Wait, they don't celebrate any of that?
Nope. They also completely ignore holidays related to countries, nations, or great historical individuals. The only celebrations they recognize are natural cosmic cycles. The text specifically mentions the Mid-Autumn Festival and the Spring Festival.
I have to push back on this just on behalf of you, the listener. It feels incredibly cold to just unwire thousands of years of human community.
It definitely sounds harsh at first.
Right. I mean, we build our identities, our moral frameworks, and our empathy around shared histories. We celebrate great people who fought against injustice. If we completely abandon human achievements and national histories, don't we risk losing our shared human connection? Doesn't that make life profoundly isolating?
The friction you are feeling there is exactly where the author's logic challenges our modern conditioning. We view shared history as a tether that keeps us grounded, but the text views it as an anchor dragging us down.
An anchor. Wow.
Yeah, the author argues that celebrating human constructs introduces ego, tribalism, and complexity. By elevating specific individuals or nations, you inevitably create in-groups and out-groups. You create pride, which just leads to conflict.
That makes sense. The text does mention that abandoning these human-centric celebrations helps people avoid reefs, pitfalls, obstacles, and deception.
Think of it like a ship navigating a channel. Human history, societal expectations, and cultural baggage, those are the reefs.
Ah, I see.
By dropping the celebrations of human triumph and focusing only on the turning of the seasons, the mind is radically decluttered. The philosophy argues this is the only way to ensure your journey remains smooth and safe, free from the deception of human ego.
The psychological mechanism there is fascinating, even if it's deeply uncomfortable to think about. You are essentially uninstalling the societal software we all run on.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
But if we pull the lens back, this mandate to declutter and detach applies to much more than just holidays and architecture. The text applies this strict non-interference directly to the cycle of living and dying.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the essay outlines the absolute natural cycle governing all things: formation, duration, decay, and emptiness.
And when applied to living creatures, that translates directly to birth, aging, sickness, and death.
Precisely. Because this cycle is the unavoidable, deliberate way of nature, the author takes a profoundly controversial stance on how we should experience loss.
So what does this all mean for the human experience of grief? Because the text demands something almost unimaginable here.
Because the philosophy dictates that ashes to ashes and dust to dust is the perfect, flawless arrangement of the universe, the author argues that mourning is inherently wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah, we shouldn't mourn the decline or breaking of a physical object. We shouldn't feel sorrow over our own bodies aging or falling ill. And most radically, we shouldn't sorrow over the passing of our loved ones.
I find myself really struggling with that concept. The idea of not grieving a loved one goes against our core biological wiring. It defies every instinct of empathy we possess.
It really does.
Right now, if someone loses a family member and feels no sorrow, society views that as a deep psychological deficit. But within the logic of this text, grief is essentially a form of cosmic arrogance, isn't it? It's a protest against nature's arrangement.
The text frames it exactly that way. To grieve is to imply that you know better than the universe, that some sort of mistake has been made in the natural order. The author describes living each day happily and freely, actively allowing everything to return to its rightful, destined place without resistance.
And this extreme detachment doesn't just apply to the end of life. It governs how they treat people who are still living. The text lays out a strict rule against interfering with others' minds and affairs.
Every individual is viewed as having their own unique life trajectory and destiny, painstakingly mapped out by nature. Therefore, attempting to change someone's mind or stepping in to alter the course of their life is a direct disruption of nature's master plan.
It reminds me of the prime directive for wildlife documentary filmmakers. They spend months in the field observing incredibly harsh realities.
Right, the non-intervention rule.
Exactly. You can film the gazelle, and you can film the lion hunting the gazelle, but no matter how gruesome it gets or how badly you want to help, you are strictly forbidden from intervening. You have to let the ecosystem run its course, because your intervention would artificially alter the survival of the entire savanna.
The author actually provides a very poetic, natural metaphor to illustrate this exact point. The essay points out that the sun is incredibly great and peony flowers are extraordinarily beautiful. Yet neither the sun nor the flower has ever actively interfered with anyone's destiny for millions of years.
They just exist.
They simply exist, radiating their nature. The argument follows that humans, being incredibly small in the cosmic scale, shouldn't attempt to impose our influence on others either.
The text takes this to its absolute logical extreme. It literally states that you must watch someone go to heaven without feeling jealousy, and you must watch someone go to hell without any intervention or interference.
Watching a person face ruin, going to hell, as the text puts it, without reaching out a hand to stop them, is the ultimate test of this philosophy. You really transition into becoming a pure, passive observer of destiny.
But if we are truly meant to be just passive observers, barred from stepping in even when someone is suffering, it completely destroys the modern concept of ambition. If you can't intervene, if you can't build great monuments, and if you shouldn't strive to alter the world, what is left to strive for?
That is the core conflict, and Lifechanyuan actively rejects the cultivation of supernatural powers, the practice of gong, magic, and what the text translates as techniques.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We spend so much of our cultural energy dreaming about exceeding our limits. I mean, every superhero movie is based on the idea that having powers beyond human capacity allows you to save the world.
But the essay argues that longing for those powers is a fundamental misunderstanding of our design. According to the way of nature, everything we need has already been perfectly calibrated for us. Our biological and sensory limits are not flaws to be overcome. They are highly sophisticated, deliberate protections.
Think of it like a built-in spam filter for your brain.
Yeah.
When you configure a spam filter on your email, you are purposely blocking 99% of the incoming traffic.
Right.
You are limiting your own vision so that your inbox doesn't explode and completely paralyze your ability to function. Nature installed the exact same kind of sensory bottleneck in human biology.
The specific examples the author uses to explain this are fascinating. The text argues our hearing and sight thresholds are restricted purely for our survival. Consider the alternative. If human ears were sensitive enough to actually hear plants growing in the ground, or if we could hear people talking 3 kilometers away, the sheer volume of data would destroy our sanity.
It would be a nightmare. Imagine trying to sit quietly and drink your morning coffee, but you can hear a field of carrots screaming as they grow, alongside every conversation happening in a 3-mile radius.
I can't even imagine. And the text also mentions the visual threshold. If we possess the ability to see ghosts around us or gods in the sky, we simply would not survive the terror and the sensory overload.
Oh, definitely not.
This raises an important question for you listening. Why do we constantly seek to break these limits? Why is humanity so obsessed with developing super advanced technology or seeking supernatural powers when nature has already provided a perfectly calibrated experience that keeps us sane?
The philosophy concludes that this relentless seeking is a symptom of our disconnection. Longing for magic or omniscience goes directly against the Tao. It's a refusal to accept the beautiful safety of our own smallness.
Yeah, and accepting our physical limits is challenging enough, but this philosophy ultimately demands that we apply that same radical acceptance to our societal and personal roles.
The ultimate state of being in this worldview is described as being calm as water.
The author provides very grounded, practical examples of what this looks like in practice. It means absolute neutrality regarding your circumstances. If you are born into poverty, you accept it. If you're born into wealth, you accept that too.
Right.
The text gives the example of accommodations. If you happen to stay in a luxurious 5-star hotel, your reaction is simply, feels great. If you find yourself staying in a humble thatched cottage, your reaction is equally enthusiastic. Wow, beautiful. You remain entirely tranquil regardless of the external vessel.
The essay uses this brilliant natural comparison to explain why we should stop fighting our societal roles. A mouse is a mouse, and a cat is a cat. That is the cosmic arrangement.
You can't argue with that.
You cannot insist that a cabbage has the same value or function as a radish, and you certainly cannot insist that wolves suddenly suppress their nature and become herbivores. They just are what they are.
This concept shares a lot of DNA with traditional Stoicism, this idea of focusing only on what is within your nature and releasing everything else. But it serves as a striking counter-narrative to our modern self-improvement culture. Today, we are constantly bombarded with messaging that tells us we need to turn our cabbages into radishes. We are told to hustle, to transform, to disrupt our natural state in pursuit of something better.
I appreciate how the text applies this directly to very specific modern anxieties. It explicitly says we should not insist that our children become rich and famous. Think about the immense psychological pressure parents put on kids to become a radish when they are perfectly happy being a cabbage.
It's exhausting for everyone involved.
Conversely, the text says we shouldn't hold disdain for our parents if they fail to leave us a substantial inheritance. You don't force others to act according to your intentions, and you don't even force yourself to become a specific type of person.
Unpacking that leads us to what the author calls the highest secret of this cultivation. When you truly walk this way of nature, your selfish desires and your desperate attachment to the self begin to vanish because the ego is entirely contradictory to nature.
So the ego just melts away.
Exactly. The text reveals this profound paradox. Selflessness leads to self, and selflessness leads to fulfillment.
You essentially have to let go of everything you desire in order to actually acquire what you need.
By reaching a state where you have successfully abandoned your ego, your ambition to intervene, and your desire to be anything other than what you naturally are, you enter a state of having nothing. But in that exact moment of having nothing, you discover that you possess everything. You align with the cosmos, belonging to a heavenly life that completely transcends the ordinary human struggle.
The author finishes the essay with a metaphor that borders on being, well, slightly cheeky. Once you actually understand this philosophy, once you fully adhere to the way of nature and step back, you look around at the rest of human society. You watch all the frantic aspirations, the stress, the people desperately trying to force wolves to eat grass, and it becomes deeply humorous to you.
The text literally says it's very funny to watch.
Yeah, because for the person following nature, it's like driving a car with a GPS navigation map installed.
When you have a reliable GPS, the anxiety of navigation completely disappears. It doesn't matter how complicated the city roads are, how many detours there are, or how challenging the traffic is, you are guaranteed to reach your destination. By surrendering your will to the way of nature, you have essentially handed the steering wheel over to the universe itself.
Let's bring all of this together for you listening. We started this deep dive talking about the exhausting reality of the modern condition. The relentless pressure to optimize, to intervene, to mourn every missed opportunity, and to constantly fix our perceived flaws.
It's a lot of pressure.
Against that incredibly noisy backdrop, there is a profound, albeit intellectually challenging, relief in the philosophy Guofeng outlines.
There really is a deep psychological allure to the idea of just playing the exact role the universe assigned you without an ounce of resistance, embracing the fact that whether you find yourself in a five-star hotel or a thatched cottage, whether society views you as a cabbage or a radish, your existence is already perfectly calculated and held safely within the palm of nature.
It's a beautiful thought, but it leaves us with something really heavy to mull over as we wrap up. Imagine if everyone in the world adopted this ultimate GPS tomorrow. If we all simply stopped interfering with others' paths, if we stopped mourning our devastating losses, and if we completely stopped striving to push beyond our natural, biological, and societal limits.
We might actually achieve that total, unshakable inner peace the text promises. The collective anxiety of the human race would evaporate. We would all be calm as water.
But consider the cost of that tranquility. Would we also lose the very friction that makes the human experience so dynamic? Without the sharp pain of grief, without the messy striving for greatness, and without the desperate urge to intervene and save the gazelle from the lion.
Do we lose our deep empathy?
Exactly. Do we lose the collective struggle and the incredible innovation that drives human connection forward? Does achieving perfect cosmic peace require the complete sacrifice of our human fire?
That is a phenomenal question.
It is a massive question to sit with the next time you feel the urge to intervene, upgrade, or control the world around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.